Hey, thanks for joining me on this training. Today we're going to be discussing professionalism in our policy around communication regarding professionalism. It's always good to have kind of a baseline standard and set just a few expectations. So we're going to roll through some of the important points of professional communication. And again, like some of my other trainings, some of you may be familiar with some of this stuff, but it is necessary to standardize it for the whole team and set a nice foundation. So even if you know about some of these things and even agree with some of these things, of course, you can rest assured knowing that after this training, you and your teammates are on the same page. So when it comes to professional communication, it's important to be kind to each other when communicating with teammates using polite language. Politeness includes saying things like thank you and showing gratitude when somebody helps you with something. Or when you ask for something, saying please, please can you do this for me? Or, maybe when you finish asking for something from somebody, you say, and, I appreciate your attention to this. I appreciate you. Using polite language like this in a general way is important so that, we are fostering a friendly atmosphere, right? Because if things get kind of tense and we get combative with each other or upset with each other when problems happen, because they will, this is normal. It's part of business to encounter problems even with each other as teammates, or things might not get done on time because we're always on a deadline. Remember that. Because we're a marketing agency, we are constantly meeting deadlines. Things can get stressful. So it's better for us to deal with problems outside of the team and work together as a team to handle them rather than not being friendly with each other and having internal problems. So we want to be clear and concise. So we want to have communication that prevents misunderstandings and ensure that messages are easily understandable. So anytime you're sending a message, whether it's email or a ClickUp comment, or maybe you're getting ready to record a Loom video, it's good to review your messages. You want to avoid jargon or overly complex language. Don't use acronyms for sure. We get used to using acronyms sometimes because we're in the digital marketing world, and so there's a lot of acronyms to shorten up technical terms. And that's good with each other, but not with clients. So it's just good for us to kind of practice it with each other. It's not required. We may use acronyms sometimes with each other to save time, but we want to avoid jargon and nomenclature because we are working across different technical fields with customer service or client service to creative like graphic design to video editing to media buying to analytics and management. So, and even sales and marketing of our own. These are different technical aspects that we work across with each other, right, as a team. To achieve our goals. So it's important that we don't complicate things for one another and be concise and review our messages before we send them. And if we think something is too complex, it's not clear enough then. So we want to respect privacy and boundaries, respect the privacy of your colleagues. You don't want to discuss too many personal matters without consent. So it's okay to have personal conversations with each other and get to know each other. But be mindful of communication boundaries, especially outside of normal working hours, especially as a professional course of action. You really need to have somebody's consent to be talking to them outside of work time. And you need to have consent to, say like, hey, if you ever want to talk about that, you can always talk to me. Like saying things like that is okay. If somebody maybe mentions a personal problem or something. But be very careful to understand that you need consent and you need to be respectful when you guys are talking about personal things. So remember that when you are communicating with each other, listen actively, don't interrupt each other. Active listening is a skill where you are paying attention to somebody while they're talking and paying attention to team members so that you can enhance understanding and collaboration. So ask clarifying questions, if you need more information or you don't understand. Like clarifying questions are like, what do you mean by that? What exactly do you mean by something you don't understand, right? And another thing you can do in addition to asking clarifying questions like, what is that? Or what do you mean by that? Is when you're actively listening to somebody, watch their eyes, look at their eyes when they're talking. That's why we always require camera on when we're communicating. Or watch the words coming out of their mouth. Actually watch their mouth while they're talking. Eyes and mouth and watching somebody's face while they talk is a great way to actively listen and pay attention. to what they're saying. You don't want to be looking over their shoulder or kind of looking down, and maybe you're that indicates your mind is wandering and you're not actually actively listening to what they're saying and being present with them. You might be off in your own thoughts while they're talking, and you might even miss what they're saying. So regular updates and feedback are important. So, if you're updating people on projects and developments, that's important. And giving feedback to people is very important as well. Just make sure that you're only using the tag function in ClickUp to ask questions and assigning comments for actions. Otherwise, you can simply leave updates in the comments, which is like a work log, where you leave an update about what you did or what's going on. If you need to give feedback to somebody, usually feedback should be in the form of a question. If you're giving feedback, like, did you mean to do this maybe for this reason? Because what I'm thinking is X, Y, and Z. So usually it's actually good to leave feedback in the form of a question. And so if you are tagging someone to leave feedback, you need to formulate it in the manner of a question. Like, hey, I saw that you did this over here. Was there a reason for that? Right? Because there might be a good reason that you just don't understand. Or they might not have a good reason. You say, oh, okay, I understand. Well, a better way to do this would be X, Y, and Z maybe, from my experience. We want constructive feedback. So just giving feedback when you list off a bunch of problems is unprofessional. You want to kind of isolate individual issues and be constructive and say, with this issue, I think these are good paths to follow. I think this is a good path to go with this particular issue. Now, on to the next issue, and then discuss that with a possible solution, right? We want to use official communication channels, okay? So don't communicate off any of the channels. We've already discussed this in the primary training, but use our official channels for work-related communication. We need transparency and traceability. This is highly important. Don't use unofficial platforms for sharing sensitive work-related information. Everything happens in ClickUp for a reason, so that we can keep work logs of client work in the tasks, right? It's very important. This kind of falls into the theory of documentation that we practice, which is if we document our communication and we have a course of documentation with our call recordings, our emails that are high impact with clients where it's an action item, and we're putting these things into ClickUp where they can be referenced, and we have work logs. These can be referenced, and this ensures long-term success for many of our clients. So ensure that all documentation is stored securely and accessible to those who need it. As far as Google Drive is concerned, be aware of file management. If you're working within the Google Drive folder, be very aware of just basic file management. This is just a basic administrative skills that as virtual workers, all of you should have. If you're just putting files into one file and it becomes a cluttered mess where we have multiple client files in the same place or multiple call recordings in the same place, nothing is really organized. There needs to be folders that are labeled, even color-coded for different categories, and we need to stay organized because when things are done in this matter, finding information is way faster. It happens a lot faster. Okay, so if a conflict arises, during the course of communication, what you want to do is go ahead and try to be friendly and negotiate the conflict with each other, and have direct communication. If it seems like in messages things are a little bit, if there's maybe language that seems like it's sarcastic, which is not allowed, we don't condone that in our team. We don't speak to each other sarcastically. Leave sarcasm aside, leave insults aside for sure. We are not going to insult each other. That's totally counterproductive to working as a team. We want to work together to achieve our goal. Mistakes happen. It's okay. But if these things do happen, or a team member seems like they're being sarcastic or they're being insulting, it really behooves you from a professional standpoint to try to handle this on your own before you escalate. Escalating problems on a regular basis is actually very unprofessional, and many management circles consider to be problematic. Obviously, management is in place for a reason. Human resource departments help mitigate things like this and manage them. However, if you're known to be the person that raises a problem every time something comes up, it kind of goes to show that you can't handle yourself. And I'm just being honest with you here in this training. The best way to professionally handle a disagreement or a problem is to handle it between the two of you like adults. And sometimes the best way to do this is actually with a Zoom call. Maybe just a quick 5 to 10 minute Zoom call and say, hey, look, you want to establish that we are on the same team. We have this path. I think our goal is the same. Establish a common goal. These are the steps. Establish that you're on the same team. Establish the common goal. And then become curious and ask how or why somebody is trying to get there. And then maybe clarify the communication. And if the communication seemed offensive, let them know, hey, I don't appreciate offensive communication if that's what that was. And maybe it's not. Maybe they didn't mean it to be that way. However the case, if you're stating what you like and what you don't like, that's what adults do. They can state what they like and what they don't like and what they want and what they don't want without fear of reprisal, and it is okay. Because if there's no offense meant, somebody will just say that and apologize, right? If there was and they're an angry person and it escalates further, then it might be time to get management involved and contact me or manager and say, hey, we got a problem with this teammate. So be sure, we actually have people on our team from all around the world. We have people in Africa, in the Philippines. We have people in the United States. We actually have people, also in, we have people in the Middle East. We have a guy in the Middle East. So we actually have quite a cross-section of culture. And so you do want to foster an understanding of cultural differences within the team, knowing that mostly English is a second language on our team. So I encourage you to be inclusive and have respect for diversity in all forms of communication and understand that English is a second language for many of the people on our team. It's not for me or some of the US-based people, but for the majority of our team it is. So keep that in mind while you're communicating. Good timelines for communication are immediately on ClickUp. Email is within 24 hours. Sometimes you might get to your ClickUp notifications once or twice a day, something like that. But definitely notify people when there's delays in responses. Okay, and this is a standard practice just with professionalism and letting people know, hey, I'll be away from my desk maybe, Saturday and Sunday, or I'll be away from my desk, for the next 3 days for some reason, something like that. Because the team might rely on you for something, and if you're going to be away for longer periods of time, you need to let people know. And I encourage you to use the autoresponder function in your Gmail. In the settings, there is a vacation setting or autoresponder function. If you are planning to take time off or you will be away from your normal duties, you need to first ensure another teammate is watching over those for you so that clients are still taken care of. And then you need to set up your autoresponder for that period of time, letting people know professionally when you'll be back at your desk and another person maybe they can communicate with, or our general support email maybe. So, as far as email management etiquette, we have a full training for that. Another thing to mention here is like when you tap another team member, you're asking a question to another team member, make sure that you're being thorough in explaining issues that you're encountering, whether it's client issues or other issues. You need to provide resources like a Loom, where you go to loom.com and record your screen and talk about the problems you're encountering. Okay, sometimes a screenshot is good enough, but most of the time, if it's a software thing, you need to include a Loom and screen record, and talk to the screen about the problem you're encountering and how you need help. Don't drop problems on team members where they don't have any background or any resources. Okay, where you just say, hey, I've got this problem, I can't do this, or something. That's not our philosophy. We approach things as experts and professionals, where we take our time to understand things meticulously, research things, and understand the problem at the proper level so that we can apply the proper solution to it. So other forms of communication, like I said before, are prohibited. That includes Slack, Google Chat, other things like that. There are some cases with really good clients where they pay us extra and they have us like in a Slack channel or something for extra communication, but they pay more for that. Outside of that, within the company, do not use other forms of communication. And also, when it comes to interacting with each other from a professional standpoint, do not discuss compensation with each other. It's just highly unprofessional, and it's very frowned upon to go around asking your coworkers how much they're getting paid, what their compensation is like. It's rude. It's very rude, and people don't really like to have to answer that sometimes. And also, if you're making good money with me, maybe you're on commission, or you have a good salary, whatever the case, don't throw it in people's face. Nobody likes somebody that's bragging. Okay, so in general, discussing pay either way, whether you're just putting your own out there or asking someone else what theirs is, it's very intrusive, and it's not professional. So just don't do it. And then also, if you ever do have client interactions, for most of you taking this training, you don't have to worry about this, because in the client success representative training, I'm going to go deeper into this. But generally speaking, you don't want to discuss business operations or how things are done with our vendors or our clients, or go deep into things. You just talk about them in a general way. You don't have to talk about what kind of project management software we use with clients. When it comes to clients, you don't have to talk about who the media buyer is, or what our experience is with them, or what service we use for design work like graphics and video editing. All people really care about is how long things are going to take and how those things will get done in a general way to reach their goal, and then seeing the goal reached and seeing the results. That's really mostly what people care about for the most part. So, really going into stuff, it's not professional. And when problems arise and this starts to happen, it frequently does, because you feel like you have to explain yourself. You really don't. You just have to explain kind of what the problem was, and if it was your fault, apologize, and then lay out a plan of how it's not going to happen in the future, or reassure somebody it's not going to happen in the future. Really going into detail and trying to say why something happened or why it's not your fault, especially, sounds like an excuse. And when you're making excuses because you're kind of talking about back-end business operations, it becomes highly unprofessional. So a lot of you don't have to worry about that so much, because you're not client facing. So you're not going to have to worry about answering to clients so much about that. But in some cases, maybe you might interact with the vendor or something, and really, unless it's necessary for the vendor to work with us, you don't have to go into a bunch of other stuff about our operations or anything. And I don't recommend it, because it doesn't really seem that professional. So that's the training on professional communication. I really appreciate you taking it. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.